It is another Tuesday night, and I trust you are very, very well. I'd like to welcome you to MarketSquare. My name is Oluwapelumi Awe, and as always, I'm delighted to have you join me on the show tonight. According to data from the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's cocoa export rose to over 400 billion naira in the first quarter of year 2024. Of the 1.04 trillion naira agricultural export from January to March 2024, the cocoa export accounted for 42.4% of it. And what is remarkable is how the cocoa prices surged by over 500% in the first quarter of year 2024 and were sold above 12 million per metric ton for the first time in the country. Farmers in Nigeria have been expressing excitement, as you can expect already, about the global price soaring. There is an headline on the screen right now that suggests what I'm talking about. Nigerian farmers excited as global cocoa price soars. According to the International Cocoa Organization, Nigeria is currently the world's fourth largest producer of cocoa with over 200,000 metric tons from year 2022 up until year 2023 season. Let's trace this increase, the source of this increase in the export of cocoa in 2024 and how it can be sustained. My guest today is an environmental consultant. He has been on the show many times and is here again tonight to share perspective on this. Welcome, Mr. Henry Olonimoyo. Yeah, given that you are a farmer, I know you're a farmer and you play majorly in this cocoa space. What could have contributed to the increased export experienced in the first quarter of year 2024?
So there has been a documented increase in the production, increased export, of cocoa by Nigerian farmers in recent times, and I think it's largely also due to the fact that other countries like Ghana and Ivory Coast, who have been perpetual leaders in exports, have been battling with infections, to their crop, to their farmlands in the last 1 year, and that has given room for Nigerian farmers to take advantage of that. This year already, and as it stands now, it appears that now many Nigerian farmers are going back to revitalize their cocoa farms because of the newfound value. At a point in the year, cocoa was selling for 18,000 naira per kilogram. That makes it about 18 million per ton. And it appears that it promises to be very, very financially rewarding. And there's now much more awareness for more Nigerian farmers, more incentive and motivation for Nigerian farmers, Nigerian cocoa farmers to be very serious with their cocoa farmlands.
Like you mentioned about Ghana and Ivory Coast, about the fact that they are two major suppliers of cocoa in the world and in the past several years. And there's also been a steady increase in the global demand for cocoa across the world. The essential raw material for chocolate production, like we all know. And it was recorded that in the first quarter of 2024, these two countries couldn't meet the world's deficit supply. It happened that because they couldn't meet the supply, it affected many countries all over the world. Could that have contributed to this surge in the export of Nigeria? What are the other things you think may have contributed to this surge experience in terms of exportation of cocoa from Nigeria to the world?
Yes, like I said, it's largely due to the fact that Ivory Coast and Ghana have struggled with widespread infections to their farmlands this year. And of course, there are also the issue of course, some of these things come because of the weather fluctuations and the rest. But I must say, it's good that Nigeria is taking advantage of this. It's not so different from what happened in the early 90s when the Gulf War was taking place in Iraq.
Yes,
and Nigeria was able to sell crude oil at very, very high prices, and it boded well for Nigeria's oil exports. So now again, it's a very good time for Nigeria to gain advantage. I hope it will be a stepping stone. I hope it will be the needed momentum for even government to do everything to ensure that cocoa exports in Nigeria doesn't come down, it's maintained, and to encourage more farmers to go into cocoa production.
I guess one of the main reasons this conversation is happening with you tonight, Mr. Henry, is also so that we're able to track the reason for this surge, and also talk about how this surge can be sustained, even as we go on, to make sure that we have more money to be able to do more things in Nigeria. In the first half of the year, the value of Nigeria's naira has fluctuated between 1,005 and 1,800. In fact, at some point this year, 2024, it was hitting around close to 2,000. I've also seen inflation happen here and there. How has naira depreciation affected cocoa farmers in Nigeria?
The floating of the naira that has led to the value of naira falling drastically against against the dollar, of course, has affected every part of the economy, and cocoa farmers are not exempted from it. Of course, you have increments in the cost of farm inputs, ranging from chemicals even to the seedlings, and even the cost of moving around. You know, farmers go to their farms, transportation, the cost is there already, and then when they are harvesting their cocoa seeds, moving them from where it was harvested to where they are selling it to, where they are taking it to, has brought some form of increase already. And so generally the fluctuation of the naira, the depreciation, I would like to call it, of the naira, as it has affected all other parts of the economy, has not left cocoa farmers out of it. And that's why we see also that even some cocoa farmers are struggling. Those who are not just trying to wake up old farms that have not been yielding as they should, are now struggling to get those farms back to a position where they are able to push out push out a high rate of production. But for some who don't have the means, they are struggling to get the necessary inputs that can boost their farms.
Definitely. And just imagine, given the surge that we are experiencing now, imagine if our naira was as high as it should have been. By now, a lot of farmers will be excited and make more money. But the fact that our naira has been depreciated doesn't really give us the kind of value that we should be getting with regards to the export that we have experienced thus far. I want to also ask you the question that is in the line of how we have fared with regards to feeding the world with cocoa in demand. I know we've spoken about the surge. Could we have exported more than we have done already? Could we have done better in terms of exporting cocoa than we have done already, given the demand that is available now, and given that Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire are not meeting the demand as it should be?
This is the big question. How Nigeria has fared with feeding the world with cocoa in demand. Nigeria has dropped. From what we used to be.
That's surprising.
In the years before the independence and shortly after our 1960 independence, where Nigeria was famous worldwide for our cocoa exports.
Sure.
Where the entirety of what we call the Western region was majorly financed with cocoa exports.
Definitely.
We had the famous cocoa house in Ibadan. And you could see that most of the things that were financed in the Western region, having one of the first set of stadiums one of the first set of stadia in the world was in Ibadan. The Western region had a television before France, and many other laudable things that we could say came by the value we got from cocoa production. In fact, at that time, you had many houses, even government houses, named cocoa houses. We had cocoa halls. All of those things was a pride. There was a time in Akure at a time when there was some roundabout, some part of Akure that you had a statue holding a cocoa pod. But you see, it's almost people growing up, people just born now in the millennials and the Z generations would almost find it difficult to understand that cocoa used to be a thing of pride to us. So we are falling. But again, we can also see that there have been efforts in the last 10 years to make it better. But could we have done much better in the last 10 years? Yes, we could. Special mentions to states like Cross River, where the Professor Ben Ayade, when he was there, was where I rolled out a massive cocoa revolution. I think states like Ondo State can still do much more, and they are not yet doing enough. I think if Ondo State and some other parts of the Western region, if they put their acts together and they support people where necessary, I believe very, very strongly that we can get back to feeding the world as far as cocoa production is concerned.
Well, I was looking forward to you mentioning Ondo because that's your domain. That's your domain there. And if you're going to compare, like you rightly said, about what was before and what it is now, how that Nigeria was feeding the world at some point with cocoa from our farms to the world, and to what it is at the moment, we can see the clear difference as to what has happened thus far. We are not faring so well with regards to that part. There was this headline that was made public by the Cocoa Farmers Association of Nigeria saying that Nigeria only can process 10% of its cocoa bean. The executive secretary and chief finance officer of the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, Mr. Arabi Olowo, has estimated that Nigeria is at risk of losing over 20 billion naira in cocoa export within the next 3 years due to the low investment as a key factor why this will happen. Let's talk about what the dangers are of this 10% possession of cocoa. What are the dangers of just possessing just 10%, and what can we do? You could just share your thoughts on that.
So, as regards improving the value chain of cocoa production in Nigeria, there's still a lot of things to do. I mean, on the back of my hands, I can count about almost all of the cocoa processing companies in Ondo, for instance. They do not complete the value chain. They stop at the level of powder, liquor, butter, and they get it. Some of them export it directly out of the country. There are even some who are even exporting just the raw cocoa beans out of the country. So we don't have the final value products like powder, tea, and chocolate and other value added products that could come from cocoa. We don't have a lot of it happening in the country. And in fact, so many companies now are struggling to continue to operate as they should. And if these things happen, you just have a situation where these companies or these places will become collection points, bagging points for cocoa beans to be packaged, raw cocoa beans to be packaged for export. So it's a major threat to our collective wealth. It's a major threat to the real value that we should be getting from cocoa production in Nigeria. And I think this is where government also must need to come in to give willing investors all of the necessary support they need to ensure that what is being produced in our backyard, we get the full value, which is to get to the end of the value chain, so that we don't have a situation where raw cocoa beans will just be exported out of the country, and we'll be exporting value, we'll be exporting jobs, we'll be exporting wealth in the long term. But governors, particularly governors, must sit down and interact with all stakeholders and map out a way to go. Again, we cannot also rule out the fact that cocoa production from the farms might be completely endangered with the rate at which other activities, demands for land is encroaching into farming areas. You have a lot of agricultural lands now that have now become are fast becoming housing estates. And the truth is, by the time everything is said and done, those housing estates will not produce food for us. It's the farmlands that produce food for us. Also, the temptation, the lure for people to want to export raw cocoa beans out of the country is high because of our currency. The currency is not doing well, and a lot of people will feel that it's an advantage for them to earn foreign currencies from packaging of raw cocoa beans. And the truth is, the people who get these benefits are not even the farmers themselves, because, mind you, the farmer must have traded off his harvest to this middleman. This middleman would have sent it to some of these big companies who have the facility and the infrastructure and the connection to be able to bag these things, meet all of the necessary export requirements to get these things exported. But again, it's at the expense of the economy in the long term.
Definitely.
And government must look inwards and ensure that we discourage this balance of trade, especially the one that is about to spring up with Russia, that will not favor the country in the long term, and see how our economy can be doing fine here. And the lure to export raw cocoa beans will be discouraged at every cost. If Russia wants to develop the value chain of cocoa, they should come and establish their company in Nigeria. But for us to give them our raw materials is exporting wealth and importing poverty for us. Thank you.
Yeah, like you said, 10% possession of cocoa in Nigeria, I don't think is the very best because we're not maximizing what we do have, and that's you're saying that you're pushing out over 80%, over 80% of what could generate some jobs in the country, some open doors in the country in terms of helping to improve our standard of living and even improve our cost of living. And so that's not something that we want to, or part we want to tow on for a very long time. And speaking of Russia, like you already mentioned, there is a report that Russia will begin to import cocoa bean from Nigeria, with the first shipment expected between September. It started in September already, and then this month of October. Let me ask you already, because you mentioned about Russia and how that this should not be made to stand, given that they should come and invest in Nigeria, set up their company in Nigeria to ensure that they're able to process the cocoa, and then it gives our country the benefits, a full pack benefit of having cocoa in our country. So what should be expected in the cocoa export for the rest of the year? We did see, like we mentioned already on the show, how that the export of cocoa heightened in the first quarter of 2024. What should we expect, bearing in mind that Russia has started to export our cocoa from Nigeria to their country? So what should be expected in the cocoa export for the rest of year 2024?
I remember one of the famous meetings that the current president of Ghana had on a presidential visit to Switzerland. And then the Swiss leaders welcomed him and gave a very fantastic speech about how the long-standing relationship between Ghana and Switzerland has gone on, and how chocolate has become one of the most consumed things in Switzerland due to the so-called beneficial business relations between Switzerland and Ghana. And when the Ghanaian president was going to respond, he said that business relationship will no longer continue as long as Switzerland is only dependent on the raw cocoa product from Ghana. That if Switzerland is ready to really do business with Ghana, it must be ready to invest in the country so that the full value chain of cocoa can be realized in Ghana, rather than just exporting it, and then the country is now importing chocolate and some other cocoa derivatives back into their own country with a lot of money. And I think that is the way forward for African leaders. We must start insisting that there must be no more route for export of raw materials out of Africa. That if the raw material is from here, then the beneficiation, the processing that would allow us to complete and realize the full value chain must be done in Africa. That way Africa can become wealthy. That way jobs and all of the associated things with wealth can stay in Africa rather than being exported out of Africa.
That insistence you mentioned African nations have to insist that these things must be done in Africa. That insistence will require a lot of confidence from our African leaders, because you have Kenya, for instance. Kenya at the moment, they're really struggling with the economy. Nigeria at the moment, we're quite struggling. We've borrowed so much money from the World Bank. And I think it will be very difficult for some African countries to be able to deny some countries, like, for instance, Russia started importing cocoa from Nigeria to their country. So I think that it may be very difficult for African nations, but I think we can grow into that space where we are more confident about processing cocoa in our country in the bit that it gives us the option of having derivatives from that, creating more jobs and making sure our countries do really, really great. Let's talk about the youth penetration in that space. You are a youth yourself, and given that you also play in this space too, what are your thoughts with regards to the youth penetrating this space? Should we expect some level of massive participation from the youth? Let's hear your thoughts.
Also, if cocoa production or cocoa cultivation will become sustainable in the country, the face of cocoa farmers have to change from the customary or usually expected old farmers to young people. Of course, there's been the late calls for young people to go into farming and the rest. And one major area is in cocoa cultivation. But the truth is, it's capital intensive.
Definitely.
You need a lot of, at least, of land for cocoa cultivation. But where the capital resources or capital instruments for the young people to go into it. I, for one, I'm planning on embarking on that in the year 2025.
Oh,
Should have happened
interesting.
2024. But there was no financial facility that I could take advantage of to help me to meet the June, July planting period for cocoa seedlings. And it has been postponed to 2025 because of that. So government must not just pay lip service to empowering young people to go into agriculture. There must be credit facility, bearable ones for young people that can encourage young people who are interested in going into cocoa cultivation on a long term, so that long term loans, so that they can have enough resources to invest into this sector, such that over the years the old farmers will pass the baton to the young farmers. Because if it continues like this, the old farmers one day will grow old and die, and their children will sell up those lands, and those cocoa plantations will become housing estates tomorrow, and that will have a deleterious effect on our economy and on the future of cocoa production in Nigeria.
Mr. Henry Olonimoyo, thank you very much for coming on MarketSquare tonight and sharing your perspective in regards to what you believe must have sponsored the increase, the surge experience in the cocoa export from Nigeria to the world, and also how we can maximize and sustain this surge such that it brings about an improved environment and an improved economy in Nigeria, and by extension, other countries in Africa can also watch this and also learn from the things you have shared. Look forward to having you every time we call for you to come up and share your perspective. And to you watching, thank you for watching. I trust you all also got something for what we shared today. Let me know what you think about all the things we've said in the comments. What do you think Nigeria should do to maximize the surge experience so far, and also the income that we have gotten from exporting cocoa across the world. Do follow us across all social media platforms on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, TikTok to get updates every time we post a video. My name is Oluwapelumi. See you on the next